If you've ever walked away from a conversation thinking, that should not have gone that way, this episode is for you. You didn't lose because you were wrong. You lost because the game being played wasn't the one you thought it was. And here's the uncomfortable truth. The most dangerous conversational traps don't feel like attacks at all. They feel like normal questions, polite questions, even reasonable ones. But by the time you realize what just happened, your credibility is damaged, your emotions are hijacked, and you're defending a position you never agreed to in the first place. Today, I'm going to show you how that actually works beneath the surface, and how to shut it down calmly, without escalating, without looking defensive, and without losing respect. Most people think verbal manipulation is loud, aggressive, and obvious. In reality, the most effective conversational control is quiet. It enters through implication, not accusation. It uses timing instead of volume. And it relies on one predictable human weakness, our instinct to respond quickly when we feel pressure. Your opponent doesn't need to dominate you. They just need to guide what you respond to. Once they control the question, they control the frame. And once they control the frame, the outcome is already leaning in their favor. Let's start with the most subtle trap that catches even highly intelligent people, responding before you've identified what you're actually being asked to accept. Many manipulative questions aren't really questions at all. They're conclusions disguised as curiosity. Instead of saying, "You're wrong," they say, "Why would you believe something like that?" The disagreement is already baked into the structure. If you answer directly, you've already accepted their premise without realizing it. This is how people end up defending positions they never chose. The power move here isn't a clever rebuttal. It's pause and clarification. You slow the exchange down just enough to separate the question from its hidden assumptions. You don't argue yet. You diagnose. Now here's where most people fail even after they've learned that lesson. They learn to spot mischaracterizations, but they still emotionally react to them. They rush to clean up misunderstandings because they feel misrepresented. That emotional urgency makes them predictable. Manipulative communicators feed on that urgency. They know that if they distort your position just enough, you'll leap in to correct it, and in doing so, you've stepped into their rhythm instead of setting your own. Advanced conversational control isn't just about correcting inaccuracies. It's about refusing to let someone else determine the pace at which you think. Another high-level trap almost no one talks about is what I call compressed accusation. This happens when multiple claims are collapsed into a single sentence so quickly that you can't properly challenge each part. Your brain hears one long idea, but it's actually several separate assumptions bundled together. If you try to answer all of it at once, you fragment your focus and weaken your response. This is why overwhelming question barrages feel so disorienting. The mind isn't built to untangle 5 claims in one breath under social pressure. The counter isn't speed. The counter is separation. You calmly isolate one point at a time and refuse to move forward until that single point is resolved. This immediately flips the power dynamic because now they have to operate at your tempo. But there's a deeper psychological layer at work in all of this that rarely gets discussed: emotional framing. Most manipulative exchanges are driven less by logic and more by identity threat. The moment someone implies that you're immoral, irresponsible, ignorant, or dangerous, the conversation stops being about ideas and becomes about self-protection. That's when people lash out, retreat, or over-explain. And once you're emotionally defending your identity, you're no longer negotiating from a position of strength. The highest-level communicators don't just address arguments. They address the emotional story underneath the argument. They reframe the interaction from enemy versus enemy into two people trying to solve different versions of the same problem. This is why staying physically relaxed during confrontation isn't just a confidence trick, it's neurological. Your body posture directly affects your threat response. A tense body primes a defensive mind. A relaxed body gives your brain permission to think instead of react. That pause you take before replying isn't just strategic silence. It's a reset of your nervous system. It's how you keep access to higher reasoning instead of slipping into survival mode. Now let's talk about persuasion, because defending yourself and persuading someone are not the same skill. Many people win arguments but lose influence. Real persuasion doesn't feel like winning. It feels like agreement emerging naturally. One of the most powerful persuasion techniques is not changing someone's mind, but showing them that their own values already support your position. When people realize they're already acting in alignment with what you're saying, resistance drops instantly. Nobody likes being contradicted, but almost everyone likes being consistent. However, there's a crucial distinction here: exposing alignment, versus humiliating someone with it. If your goal is status, you'll say, "Gotcha." If your goal is influence, you'll say, "We actually agree more than it seems." Publicly cornering someone might make the audience laugh, but it poisons the relationship. Humiliation creates enemies, not allies. The strongest communicators protect the other person's dignity, even while dismantling their argument. One of the most overlooked persuasion tools is shifting from abstract language to concrete reality. Abstract statements sound intelligent, but they rarely move people. The mind doesn't emotionally respond to generalities. It responds to time, scale, effort, and consequence. A concept becomes persuasive when it feels real, not when it sounds correct. If you want your point to land, you translate it into something the listener can imagine living through, not hypothetically understanding, but emotionally experiencing. There's also a strategic mistake almost everyone makes when being challenged. They answer every question instead of addressing the underlying motive behind the questions. Sometimes people aren't seeking truth, they're seeking validation, control, or reassurance. If you only respond on the surface level, the tension never resolves because the real issue remains untouched. Advanced communicators listen for what the other person is emotionally trying to confirm: insecurity, fear, mistrust, resentment. When you address that directly, the entire tone of the exchange can shift in seconds. And here's the hardest truth of all. Sometimes people aren't trying to understand you, they're trying to define you. The moment you feel like you're being forced into a character, villain, enemy, extremist, threat, that's a framing battle, not an information exchange. You don't escape that by arguing harder. You escape it by rejecting the frame entirely and offering a new one. One where mutual intention replaces mutual suspicion, not as a tactic, but as a genuine invitation. So what does mastery actually look like in real life? It looks like slowing conversations down when others try to speed them up. It looks like clarifying instead of reacting. It looks like separating bundled claims instead of wrestling with the entire pile at once. It looks like staying physically calm while others escalate. It looks like defending ideas without attacking identity. And most importantly, it looks like understanding that the goal of communication is not dominance. If you take nothing else from this, take this: whoever controls the pace and the frame controls the outcome. And the most dangerous traps are the ones that make you feel like you're choosing freely, when you're actually being guided. Once you start seeing these patterns, conversations change forever. You stop feeling ambushed. You stop feeling rushed. You stop feeling like you lost before you even spoke. And instead of walking away replaying what you should have said, you walk away knowing exactly why you said what you did. And that's real power.